Welcome to the Blackthorn Brothers Game Dev competition. All 6 of you have been invited to compete to make the best video game for $3,000. Every week, a panel of judges will play, dissect, and analyze each game and decide which 2 projects to brutally eliminate. The remaining devs will move on to the next phase of the competition and get that much closer to the golden throne. You'll all need to base your game on a specific theme, and the theme for this competition is synergies. Go wild, have fun, think outside of the box, and earn yourself a place on the Hall of Fame alongside local legends such as Wishbone Games, Lighthook Dryden, Zoteling, past competitors and winners who all started their insanely successful projects on these Blackthornprod competitions.
So the theme is synergies. Okay, interesting. I'll need to think on this because right now I have no idea.
That's a really tough one.
Synergies.
Synergies is a concerning theme because I'm scared of what the other contestants are going to come up with that I'm not going to.
I feel like most people are going to go for elements. I reckon we'll see a bit of magic or some science-related stuff.
My mind would immediately go to a roguelike, but I'll need to think how I can make it interesting.
I actually went to ChatGPT and we just kind of hashed some ideas back and forth for a while because I had nothing. But I am excited now.
I'm not concerned about Brandon because he revealed his age.
All the ideas I'm getting are not at all similar to the kind of games I've made before, so I think I'm gonna have to take a big risk on this one and do something completely outside my wheelhouse.
I'm going to try and take the more literal approach of synergies, which is the idea of teamwork. So yeah, let's see what we can come up with.
I'm not concerned about Kotie either because Kotie said that he has a job.
I have kept myself in the dark. I haven't looked into any of them, so for all I know, they could all be some sort of game dev god.
If I'm being honest, I feel like I'm gonna get eliminated first because I don't know how confident I feel in my game dev skills.
I have no idea what to expect or who is going to be eliminated. I just hope it's not me. And if it is me, then I know who to blame. Aya?
This is gonna be a real challenge.
6 challengers, only 1 winner. Who will win the Blackthornprod competition? Let's find out.
Hey everybody, I'm Chip. When I heard the theme synergy, all the ideas I had are for games that are really systems heavy, where normally I make games that are a lot more about action and atmosphere. But then I remembered this board game I used to play called Suburbia, where you're building a city by placing down tiles. And all the tiles you place will get bonuses or penalties for the tiles placed around it. So I made a game where you're mining moons and asteroids by dropping pods down onto them. You have a certain amount of days to reach your quota, and you have to be careful to not use up all your energy or destabilize the planet. It turned out that projecting a 2D grid over a sphere was extremely difficult, as well as creating this fake 3D computer monitor effect. I'm shooting rays into render textures, which are then shooting rays out of a different camera. It creates this double raycast effect on everything that I do. If I make it to the next round, there's so much more I could add to this game. I want to add different planets with different terrain types, maybe volcanoes and riverways. There's a whole bunch of new pods with different synergies I could add, as well as a sort of roguelike meta progression through the whole thing, as well as a good healthy dose of balance.
When I first heard the theme, all I could think of was a Souls-like game where you and a dog try to become knights, but all you do is cause chaos. Only together can you complete it, so the focus is the synergy between you and the dog.
Thank you Milanote for sponsoring this episode. Milanote helps people think and plan better at the early stages of the creative process. It's a flexible and structured workspace that lets ideas grow in whatever way makes sense to you, so it feels less like traditional software and more like working on a wall in a creative studio. Right now we're using Milanote to work on our new deck builder video game. We've organized the project into several boards, such as this research board and game design planning board. I gathered visual inspiration, photography, paintings, various artistic styles, adding notes, images, story ideas, and more to my research boards, all in one place. It's incredibly fun and intuitive. Milanote makes starting a new project easy with over 100 built-in templates available for every type of creative project. For example, I often use the game design brainstorming and game design flow diagram templates. When you're ready to share your work, you can invite your team to gather important feedback and collaborate with them in real time. For example, I shared this board with a few dev friends to get their feedback on the overall atmosphere and inspirations I'd be basing this new project off. Cherry on the cake, Milanote is available for free with no time limit, so sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description.
I started by making the player, added walking and dodging, and then I made the dog. The dog only followed the player, so instead I gave the player abilities and made this shield throw ability where the dog runs up to the player before jumping onto the shield. You then throw the shield and stun anything that you hit. If you don't hit anything, the dog will come back from behind you. Next up was enemies. I made a badger and gave it a sword swipe. When you get near it, your camera will lock on to that target and you walk around it whenever you walk to the side. At this point I was getting to the last day and needed to make a quick level. I wanted to make a forest, so I threw together something in Blender real quick and set up a scene. I had a lot more planned but ran out of time, so if I make it on to next week I plan on adding voice lines, polishing the combat, making more enemies, and overall I want to make it so that the dog has more attacks of its own because right now it doesn't. Hopefully you like what I've made though, and fingers crossed I'll be there for next time.
Okay, so my friends did something mean to me, so now in return they have to explain the game.
Hey guys, we are the
Hey.
So basically Gamba Gun, it's a really fun game that's about gambling and guns. So what's not to like about that, you know?
Gamba Gun is the deck building roguelike top-down shooter that you've always wanted. Instead of having a deck of cards, you have a deck of bullets. And the guns shuffle the bullets around, and you have to pick the best bullet combo to destroy waves of the guys that are attacking you.
Do you have a lust to gamble? Well, fear no more, because Gamba Gun is where you do that. You can use diamond bullets to blast the enemies away, and you can use cherry bullets to blast the enemies away also.
Gamba Gun is a really fun game. You guys should all give it a try.
Hey guys, I'm Brandon from Sasquatch B Studios. This theme was tough and I wanted to do something a little different, so there are 2 characters in my game and you play as this guy. He is completely invincible. Your job is to protect this guy up here who's completely helpless and dies pretty easily. But he's also the only one with a key which unlocks both doors so that you can both escape. So the question is, how are we going to protect him? And that's where your surge ability comes in. On objects that are surgeable, you aim and then you do a huge dash in your aim direction. This will damage enemies. It will deflect projectiles back at enemies and double the projectile damage. And it's going to reset your air jumps and dashes every single time you use it. So using this, if you chain your abilities up properly, you can stay airborne indefinitely. I wanted to make a game with a character that felt completely overpowered and it's feeling really great. That all went totally fine. What wasn't so easy was getting this guy up here moving on his own. And okay, that didn't work. It's looking a little better this time. I guess he can just float upwards, that's okay, but at least he's gonna make it to the end. Oh, and he's stuck. Somehow it's worse this time. I have no idea why he's horizontal. Okay, so I sorted that out. He's vertical now, but I still hate it. Okay, so no more rotating. He's still pretty floaty, but that's okay. And he no longer floats up because there's a ladder there. That's just gonna have to be good enough. Art has been the thing that scares me the most since starting this project. Usually my wife does art for me, but that would be cheating here. So I went through my assets and I found this pack here. I don't really know if I like it for this game, but at this point I only have 10 hours until I have to submit the game and this video, so I'm just gonna go with it. So when all was said and done, I used some shaders, I used some post-processing, and I think it's looking okay now. And after adding a few more finishing touches, here's the end result.
With the theme being synergies, I definitely have a lot of routes to go from. But first, the interaction or cooperation of 2 or more organizations, substances, or other entities. Okay. After reading the definition, the first thing that comes to mind is an orchestra, which basically synergizes the instruments into a song. So first, I fired up Unreal Engine and added this Opera House asset pack. This will be the main setting for the game. Then I went on Sketchfab and downloaded 7 different instruments to be added to the stage. Each of these instruments will contribute to the orchestra as a whole. But first, I need to make the most important aspect of this game: music. I opened FL Studio and made tracks for the 7 different instruments. Each track has the same key and BPM, so they can be played on top of each other. I exported each of these tracks into Unreal and made it so that the player can alternate between each instrument's mode. But right now, there isn't really a challenge. The player can just make whatever song they want. So I made this music sheet that displays what mode the player needs to set for a specific instrument. Each mode is represented by these 3 symbols. I also made a timer in the top right, so the player has a time limit to set the correct instrument. Then I made an audience blueprint. The audience will cheer if the player does it correctly and boo if they don't. Now the base gameplay is pretty much done. I made this menu blueprint and added 3 different game modes for the player to choose from. Encore mode, which is the main one, where the player has to go through 7 different rounds to win. Creative mode, where you can just play whatever you want with no audience. And lastly, arcade mode, where you have to last as long as you can. If I get to the next round, I'm planning on adding other genres of music for the player to choose from. So if you want to see that, please let me in the next round.
Right, so luckily I had an interesting idea. I was thinking that, synergies, chemical reactions, boom. And so I began by planning a bunch of different things, and the basic premise I ended up with is a roguelike where you infuse your gun and bullets with 2 different chemicals, and then when you shoot, it makes some crazy effects. The first 2 whole days were spent on art because animating characters is not my strong suit and took the entirety of the first afternoon. While doing this, I did make a simple top-down character controller with a surprisingly satisfying slide, but I kind of needed an actual game loop. The shooting and reactions logic wasn't actually too hard to get working, but there wasn't really anything to shoot, so I had to mess around with Unity's nav mesh and make these zombies that run towards you. If you're thinking that they look suspiciously similar to the player, you're wrong. From there on, I got this UI working so that you could actually, combine the elements, and then on the final day I had to rush to get some of the most basic reactions added, fix some visual stuff, find some free sound effects, and make some music. If I make it through to next week, I mostly plan to improve the game loop, maybe go for more of a dungeon crawler with randomly generated rooms. I'll add more reactions, vary the enemies, and add some kind of player upgrades, so hopefully I make it through.
Introducing our judges. Aya is the creator of Mana Valley. Lemon is the developer behind Patch Quest and is now working on Ant Hill Village. Andrew created Tadpole Tales. And finally, there is yours truly, the Blackthorn brothers.
The Souls game was very ambitious, perhaps a bit too ambitious for 1 week. The synergy was that you have a man and a dog, and they have synergetic attacks, but there wasn't really much there in the way of synergetic attacks. There was a sword swipe and a stun.
I know that there is no synergy right now whatsoever, but I love the aesthetic.
Yeah, a nice charming style. It's just the fact that the level, like, you just duplicated all the trees and yeah.
Moondrop Miners, I thought it was very impressive for 1 week's work. I think that I developed quite fast, but clearly not.
That one I stayed for like 45 minutes playing.
Nice.
It felt like a complete game that just needed feature. Like vertical slice was done and, gone from there.
I like the feel and the aesthetic, but I'm not sure if it's currently serving the gameplay as well as it could be.
I really like the gun swapping mechanic. I think that one has a lot of potential.
Without it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. With it, I can see like, oh, okay, I can build 2 different kinds of gun that would then synergize with each other by covering each other's weaknesses. And within that, each one gets bullets, and maybe those bullets can synergize to create an effect as well.
I really like the feel, and I didn't know, like, at first. I was like, what is this? Like, this doesn't really make sense. And then I was like, oh, like, there's like a time slowdown, and there's like a charge up ability. And I really liked that. Yeah, I just like the feel of it. But I don't know if like the direction that he's heading with the game is the way to go.
Not incredibly on theme either, when I think of it.
Yeah, because synergy, there is no synergy. It's more like I just have to protect someone. The other character isn't really helping me to get where I want to go either. Like, sure, it has the key, but it's just that it needs to get from point A to point B, and that's it.
My favorite thing about StopShut's game was definitely the atmosphere, playing in an orchestra, and the idea of using the theme synergies. You're right? And a whole orchestra is an entire synergy, so that was great. Just, I didn't feel enough in the actual gameplay itself.
I had some ideas for where it could go, but the devlog didn't give me any sort of like anticipation that that's where it was going to go. It was more like, I'm going to add more music.
I think the idea was really cool, and his devlogs were really nice with like really nice editing, storytelling, and the SFX and all were great. The music was great, and I think the composition probably took the most time for him to like get it to there, which I can understand why in a week it was really difficult.
Chemical combat I see falling in this trap. It's kind of like a cool idea of combining the elements to make attacks, but I could see it being like too much to become fun.
These are very hard decisions. Lemon, can you announce the first semi-finalist?
Yes, I can. The first semi-finalist is going to be Moondrop Miners.
Congrats.
Awesome.
Congrats. Andrew, you can announce the second semi-finalist.
The second semi-finalist would be Nolan.
Congrats, Mr. Nolamo. Aya, who's the third semi-finalist?
Brandon with Surge Bound.
The fourth and final semi-finalist, moving on between KotieDev, SIgmoid, and StopShut. This was a very painful and difficult decision. The last semi-finalist is SIgmoid. Congrats.
Let's go.
Congrats, man.
Congrats.
Hey everyone, going into this week I had a plan. First I wanted to address all the judges' feedback, then I wanted to improve the playability of the game, and then finally I would expand it further with more features and more structures and cool things that you can build. So for playability, I added the ability to rotate the moon in more directions, I improved the UI, made it a lot more clear, I added more feedback around placing structures, and then finally I added the ability to speed up the game by holding left click. To expand the game, I wanted to increase the playability while also adding more depth to the gameplay. Now instead of one big quota the player has to meet, it's split up into a bunch of smaller quotas. The player now receives money every time they complete a quota, and that money can be used to unlock more powerful structures. This ended up being a really big change. It ended up taking most of the week, and there were so many more things I wanted to get in for this version, but I'm really happy with how it improved the gameplay. Halfway through the week, I was thrown a twist, and I had to add a mechanic from SIgmoid's game into mine. So I noticed in his game he had these nuclear barrels around the map, so I decided to make a structure that's a nuclear reactor. I colored it to look just like the ones in his game, and this is a powerful structure that uses up a lot of stability but gives you a lot of energy. Finally, to play off of his chemical combining mechanic, I added the oxygen and hydrogen structures that they only get a benefit when they're next to each other and not anything else. I almost had enough time to add in satellites, which are permanent upgrades for the rest of your run that can be purchased at the shop. They didn't quite make it in, it was a little too tough. If I make it into the finals, I'll for sure be adding those, as well as more planets, more upgrades, more things to unlock, and lots of extras to the gameplay. I hope I make it to the finals. Alright, bye!
This week on Gambagun, I added a bunch of new upgrades. Notably, the two centered around the twist. I needed two mechanics from Sasquatch's game put into mine, so I added a companion that helps you, the doggy, and a dash that grants invincibility in the form of punchy bullets. I also added other new upgrades, enemies, effects, pickups, and a lot of polish. But don't take my word for it, hear it from these guys.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? And today we're here with my brother, and we're gonna be showing you guys the similarities between rock climbing and Gambagun.
Wow. Isn't that awesome?
So basically, in Gambagun,
when you're climbing the ranks in Gambagun, you really gotta think about strategizing and just thinking about the game chess when you're playing to the wall.
ladies and gentlemen, in Gambagun, you basically need to use the right synergies with the right bullets to get all the way to the top of the leaderboard. Alright, so this is a lot like beating the game in Gambagun when you get to the top, and it's really cool, and I'm scared to so I'm gonna fall down now. Thanks for playing Gambagun! Thanks, judges!
Now that is what happens when you combine the right bullets.
Based on the feedback I got, I'm going to start with my biggest weakness, art. Last week I slapped something together quickly and nobody loved it, myself included, so I went back to the drawing board and redid everything from scratch. The new style relies heavily on what I am strong with, shaders and a little post-processing. Now I am not an artist, but I do know one thing, color theory matters, so I got myself a color palette to make sure that my levels are nice looking. Frank hopefully looks less like a hot dog now, and he's glitchy, which is why he can't defend himself. For the enemies, I liked the original drone idea, but instead I remade them just from basic shapes. Now the next most important thing is that everyone wanted more synergy between the two players. So now you have to help each other get to the end of the level. And I added what's called Surge Blasts to Frank, so if you surge off of him, you get this. And I also introduced the Surge Orb. I didn't know what else to call it, but when Frank takes damage, he drops this orb. If you surge off of it, it turns into a remote bomb basically, and you detonate it by using Surge again. I needed it to be difficult to master because it's really powerful. It kills enemies and it heals Frank. I added a bunch of levels where I tried very, very hard to introduce the mechanics of the game to players slowly and methodically this time, and I did manage to squeeze in a few hours for the twist, so I added some cards that open at the start of each level, giving you some simple buffs. If I move on to the next round, what I want to add is more challenging levels, more cards, more enemies, and really hopefully a boss or two. And that's all I got for this week. Wish me luck.
Well, being announced last there was quite intense, but in all fairness, the other games were incredible. I have no idea how Chip got his looking so good in 1 week, so I'm a bit worried about him, but anyway, I've got a load of work to do. Well, speak of the devil. That's an interesting twist, but I can definitely work with it. Alright, so I've kind of changed the entire premise of my game. I'll try to summarize as much as I can, but basically I felt that it lacked any objective, so I'll be trying to make it more fun to play. Firstly, the starting area has been vastly expanded. Up here at the top there'll be a shop of some sort, then down here I'll put a training area, and then on the left, so that I can incorporate the twist, I'm planning to have a sort of quarry where you place down drills that mine elements, which are now a limited resource as some of the judges suggested not having everything unlocked from the start. In order to power these drills though, you'll need to buy fuel with coins that you get from killing enemies in the labyrinth, a huge dungeon of procedurally generated rooms. Quite a massive change, so it was straight to programming, which made me instantly regret going for procedural generation. It took forever and a day to get it working, even most of the time, but what I felt would really elevate the game would be proper lighting, and I think I was right. I then went and did some work on the aforementioned rooms, beginning with the target dummies, which were a bit tricky to get working, but I got there eventually. For the quarry then, I just drew some dirt and this animated drill. I'll definitely need to work on the whole thing more next week, but I hope it's good enough for now. Anyway, the game loop was a bit lacking, so I got the enemies added back, made them drop coins with this animation I'm super happy with, and added a bit more to the UI, including a mini-map so that you can find your way around. I made some quick upgrades that you could buy with said coins, and got the drilling stuff half working, but there's so much more I need to add next week. A proper building interface, furniture to all the rooms, destructible objects, traps, ever-increasing difficulty, boss fights, a tutorial, and so much more. Okay, maybe that's slightly ambitious for 1 week, but I'll add as much as I can. Hopefully I'll see you all there.
ChipMicro's game.
The balancing has improved tremendously. I was able to go through, I think, about 7 levels or 6 levels. The store editions was a great addition, I think, as well. And some quality of life features like speeding up time and all that, it was also a great addition. It just made the whole game playthrough a lot more fluid. Whether it get fast with my pacing or not, I had the whole control and it was good.
I probably had the most fun with Gamba Gun.
I think the game improved a lot this week, and there's definitely a lot more synergy in it now than there was before. I do think it could be taken further. I feel like it doesn't make full use of the fact that you have 2 guns yet. Automatic swapping is a step backwards, because now it's really just like you have 1 set of bullets, but with 2 reloads.
It's true.
You need to make synergies within each gun, and then synergies across the guns.
I think there's still loads of untapped potential with the game. The idea is great, I feel. More polish, of course, in the environment, because for now it's just like plain.
Brandon's game, so much work, right? From week 1 to week 2.
Yeah.
So much change.
I really liked the art style, much more minimalist, cool shaders, and also just a really cool platformer.
I do feel like in terms of like the theme, it feels more like cooperation and maybe not synergy.
I agree, man. I agree.
I mean, I guess you're helping each other a little bit, but there's not really like a synergy.
Yeah, but I feel like the amount of progress he made this week was like really massive. The thing of synergies, I'm sure if we tell him that, I'm sure he can find a way to improve on the theme.
SIgmoid, very, very crisp, very clean, great pixel art.
I think the biggest problem was its maybe potential. Like, it still wasn't clear to me how the progression would go from that point on.
Procedural generation for the world, I don't think really added that much. Like, it's cool, but I don't think it added that much to the gameplay.
We're gonna have to announce 2 finalists. It was freaking brutal. We're gonna start with Andrew announcing the first finalist of this game dev competition.
The first finalist of this competition is ChipMicro. Moondrop.
Well done.
Oh, man.
Congrats, man.
Oh, I'm stoked. Thank you so much. I was very worried after I played everyone's games last night.
With that said, we've got SIgmoid, Nolam, and Brandon. All three of you have created exceptional work in 2 weeks. Crazy progress. But we had to come to the decision, and the judges have decided that the second finalist is Nolam.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's how you do it.
All right, final week. I went all out this week. I saw how much Nolan's game improved from week 1 to 2, and I knew he was going to bring it this week, so I just had to go full gas and just polish it up as much as I could and try to get a complete experience for the judges. However, there was still a few more pieces of content that I wanted to get in first. So first I made a new moon, Callisto. Callisto is the most heavily cratered moon in our solar system, so I added these craters that block the player from building. This simple mechanic really changes up the gameplay, and it forces the player to pay way more attention to the spatial puzzle of the level. And then I added the satellites that I almost got in from last week. I'm so happy with how these turned out. They play a bit like Jokers in Balatro. They completely change up your playstyle and they add so much synergy. For example, if I get the solar reflector, it causes my solar panels to trigger more often. And then I get the battery, which gets buffed for all the solar panels triggering before it. And now I've got a ton of energy. So I get the overcharged satellite, and that buffs my miners for having excess energy. And this is just one of the many new builds you can play with in the game. And I have ideas for like 100 more that I just can't wait to get in. And then halfway through the week, we got another twist. I had to add a part of Gamba Gun into my game. And the first thing I think of when I think of Gamba Gun is all those juicy explosions. So I decided to add one to my game. And this is what happens when you destabilize the moon. I also really like these green XP diamonds, so I added a leveling system to my game and yoinked those icons. So you can now buy upgrades to your structures, and this really helps fill up the shop and it extends build diversity even further. And then for the end of the week, I just focused on polish. More immersive moments, playability, I wrote more music, I added more sounds, and I just pushed the game as far as I could. I've really fallen in love with this game. I find myself just playing round after round, and when I'm done recording this, I'm probably just going to go back to playing some more. I really want everyone to try it out, so I'll be putting it up on Steam and trying to get a demo out soon. So please wishlist if you're interested. This has been such an amazing experience, and win or lose, I'm just super happy with what I was able to make.
These devlogs are supposed to be 2 minutes long. Not happening. Apparently, last week, my devlog was also unprofessional, so whatever, dude. This week in Gamba Gun, I got a lot done. Hopefully enough to knock out ChipMicro. I was told to add some mechanics from his game, so I added a shop and some resource management. You spend your max health as a resource now to get really good guns. There's also a new resource called Bob, and Bob drops from enemies, and you spend the Bob at the shop, and the shop has some really good stuff. And right before the shop, a new enemy called Roberto drops a bunch of Bob, but you have to kill him before you level up. Okay, so it's kind of a rush to kill Roberto to get the Bob. It's a rush to kill Roberto to get the Bob. I added a real boss, not just a mini boss. It goes. I also added the Gorbidly. He's a big enemy, he's tanky, and he explodes into more enemies. The death screen got a lot of polish this week. Lots of polish. My little sister did voice acting for it, so when you die, she tells you that you need to do something else with your life. The main menu is now a silly playground. You can click anywhere and something will happen. You can also change the letters of the main menu, which is really awesome for people who love to spell. You can spell that word, and you can spell that word, so I hope you're excited, as I am. Finally, I made a bunch of balance changes. Hopefully the judges are able to reach the boss. Maybe not kill it, okay? But they're going to be able to reach the boss. hopefully. I want to shout out my mom. I want to shout out Jeremy. I want to shout out Eve, Lily, Eric, and Marcus. And you know what? I don't want you to wishlist Gambagun on Steam. I don't want your wish list. Don't wishlist Gambagun on Steam.
On one hand, I had more fun with Gambagun, but on the other hand, I feel like Moondrop Miner is more original, and I feel like it works better with the theme of the competition. So I'm kind of split.
Both of the games are really well polished, really well put together. Considering it's only been 3 weeks, they're both pushing fast towards being complete packages. Level of detail and polish in both of them is really good.
ChipMicro's Moondrop Miner does feel like the type of game that it's a much bigger scale. Gambagun I did play a lot more, but also the play session by design is a lot shorter, so you're just tend to like, you die, you try again, you die, you try again. But that's as far as that game has to offer at the current state, whereas Moondrop Miners felt more like, okay, this is this story, you're in this place, there are these levels, and the content can just get added on and on.
I mean, he really went ham with like the the animations, the polish on it. The addition of the satellites and all that, it really adds cool mechanics.
When Nolam posted his update, I was like excited to try it. It's super fun. It does pull a lot of inspiration from things that I've seen a lot of, but I find myself like wanting to continue playing it.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be serious, but I feel like some of the humor and things in Nolam's game and Gambagun sort of take away from the experience.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It does feel a little pushed.
Feels like there's an inside joke and I'm not really included in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Didn't really feel like there was that much synergy. In fact, I feel like there was perhaps less this week than the previous week.
Yeah.
Because in the previous week, you had a few different elements that you could combine. And so each playthrough, you're like, I'll try this combination. Then it's, I'll try this combination. But in this week, it was more, now you've got like cherries and rocks, and I didn't quite understand what they did, and I didn't quite understand how they combined. And it more just felt like I was jamming loads of random stuff into my gun.
Extremely fun games, and it's so incredible that you guys just took the theme and did completely different things. The experiences couldn't be more different. This is why also judging is even harder, because it's based also a bit on the preferences of the judges, what types of games we like more. But we did come to a decision. ChipMicro, what are your thoughts on Nolam's game? And after playing it, do you feel like he might win?
There's just so much personality in that game. I knew he was going to continue to add all of that polish in there. I needed to be able to keep up with that. So, inspired me to just add a lot of those little bits and, things in the menus where buttons are reacting and all that stuff. And I played the game after I submitted mine. I had a smile on my face the whole time, so.
And Nolam, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Well, I'm the kind of person who plays video games that satiate my ADHD. So I play ChipMicro's game, and it's a little slow, and there's not enough screen shake, and there's not enough, it just doesn't work for me. But I think it's strong. I think he's got a lot of polish. I don't know what's gonna happen.
We'll start with Liam. Go ahead. Who are you voting for to win?
Yeah, my vote is going towards Gambagun. Congrats, man.
Okay.
Just love the polish in the game, the new combos you added, and just all the funny sound effects, all the jokes. So it just made for a really great experience.
Lemon, who are you voting for?
I am voting for Moondrop Miners. I think that the game has a huge amount of synergy in it.
Aya, who are you voting for?
I loved the fun of Gambagun, and I really appreciated that there was a right-click option in the power-ups. Unfortunately, I could never get to it. I couldn't get enough blobs, and I could never get 20 to get it, so I never got to try it. For that reason, I'm voting for Moondrop Miners.
Oh.
I added that for you,
So, Andrew.
For me, my vote is going for Moondrop Miners. Congratulations. That's not to say I absolutely love both games very much.
Yeah, I also vote for Moondrop Miner. Very close, very hard decision.
It was hard, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to actually become my new main project. I think the one I'm currently working on is going to get pumped.
I'm going to be back, and I'm going to win.
If you don't want to watch more high-stakes game dev competitions like this one, then definitely don't subscribe to the channel. Links to all the developers' work is in the description. Go and show some support to these indie gems. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.